Hey guys, you ever been wondering, I got to get my patients out of this COVID mindset gap thing, and I just don't know how to do it. Well, if you're wondering how you can get out of that and help your patients get out of that, you're going to love this. I got a good friend of mine, Dr. Christopher Phelps, who's a brilliant, brilliant human being, and he's going to show us the mindset and how we avoid that on the Best Practices show. So you do not want to miss this. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. You're going to love this. Hey guys, welcome to the Best Practices Show podcast. I'm your host. My name is Kirk Behrendt, and I want to thank you for showing up. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. I know you're going to enjoy today because I've heard this from so many dentists. Like, I am just tired of talking about the pandemic over and over and over every day with every patient. So today we're going to be talking to a brilliant man who's a dentist, and he's also a serial entrepreneur that I've known for years, who will twist how you think about this. Now, if you're here for the first time, I always like to do a couple things. If you're a young dentist and you're just showing up for the first time, welcome. We're just a community of people that love learning, and you're going to see every single week, I'm going to bring a great thought leader and challenge you with some best practices so you can create a better practice and a better life. So here's what I want you to do. If you're listening on Spotify right now or iTunes, wherever, go down to the subscribe button and just hit the subscribe button, because I want you to keep showing up every single week. I just don't want you to miss out. We also take great show notes. So everything Chris and I talk about today, you're going to see our writers will put it together, and you'll see links right below. So if you're ever wondering, where the heck do I find that? Just swipe up to the show notes. You can click right to the links and it'll take you right there. Also, if you haven't joined our private Facebook group, I'm going to encourage you to show up, head over there. It's the Best Practices powered by ACT Dental, where we just started this during the COVID conference last year as an opportunity for people to support, dentists to support other dentists and team members. And it's been a great community that continues to grow, and you'll absolutely love it. And then lastly, if you're looking to just create a better practice and a better life, join us over at actdental.com, where we've got a ton of resources. We have Act Dental U, and this Friday, just to give you an example, we offer a masterclass every single Friday. So this Friday is Dr. Nate Lawson, and he's going to be talking about advanced concepts in zirconia. So he's brilliant. And all these master classes every single Friday, you have 24/7 access to it, as well as a community of people. And again, we're always just looking to see how we can improve your thinking and grow a community. And then if you're just looking for somebody to talk to about your practice, we're always here. We're a practice coaching company, and we are here to help. So I want to introduce my guest, Chris. I have known you for a long time. Now, I'm going to share a little story before we get started, because I heard there was some folklore about you, and I was like, okay. From Brian Smith and a couple of the other guys that went to dental school, they're like, this guy in dental school. No, I'm not kidding. Like, he was a serial entrepreneur in dental school. He used to help us through dental school. If it was ever, you started your own company in dental school. You were simplifying courses and then helping other people get through dental school. And then you just got out in the world and created your own practice. And you've been doing the same thing since. I've had you speak at our conferences. I just always enjoy you. And then one time we were up at Strategic Coach together, and we went out to dinner, and I'm like, you're everywhere, always thinking, I want people to know who Dr. Christopher Phelps is if they've never heard you before. So who are you?
Well, that's a loaded question. Like you said, Kirk, I'm an entrepreneur that happens to be a pretty good dentist. I've been a practicing dentist in Charlotte, North Carolina for, coming up on 18 years now. Oof, that's hard to believe. And as you said, when I was in dental school, that's when I discovered I was an entrepreneur. My process is of learning and trying to be an expert in something, really being a fact finder 10 and really getting it. to that kind of level is sloppy and messy, and it takes a lot of time. And so to study for my test in dental school, 'cause it's a lot of data you had to process, I had to simplify it. I had to try to figure out what is the most important stuff to know. So I would condense everything I highlighted in books, all my notes and slides they shared with us during the courses throughout the semester. And I would condense every test down to 5 pages of front and back of notebook paper. And word had gotten out. A buddy of mine came and wanted me to tutor him, and I was happy to help him. And I shared my notes with him. I said, "Look, buddy," because I saw him putting the time in. He was studying, but he wasn't getting the results. He was getting like D's and C's and not good grades. So I said, "Look, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you got to know the material, but here's what I study. Just study these 5 pages front and back, and let's see how you do. Put your time into this." And so he did. He put his time into that, and I talked to him after the first test, and I was like, "Hey, how'd you do?" He's like, "You're not gonna believe this. I got a 92." Oh,
Wow.
huge. He used to get 72s, so we're making progress. So the next test, he asked me if I had the next test. I was like, "Yeah, dude, I do this for every test. This is the way I have to learn it." So he asked me for that, and I said, "Here, take it, share it, here, take it, use it." And he got a 96 on that test, right? And then he handed me $20, and he said, "Thanks for the tutoring." And I was like,
Wow.
"Ooh, you're welcome." And I just told my wife, I was like, "Honey, I just got paid to study." That was kind of cool. And next night, a knock came on my door at my apartment around 9 p.m. And it was another one of my classmates, somebody who wanted to go to specialty school, so really need to get the grades, to get in to put himself in position to. And he said, "All right, Phelps, I was at the library and I saw this guy, and I hear you got these notes." And he hands me $20 and he says, "I want a copy." I'm like,
That's awesome.
"Awesome." So yeah, flash forward, I started putting them on red paper and whatnot, and I had about 2/3 of my class on the payroll
Wow.
for every test. And the probably the top 5% of the people hated me because it kind of blew the curve out of the water. But I feel like I did make them better by forcing them to learn it better. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of my first foray. So I've been
Well,
practicing. Yeah,
I could have used you in college. Like, I think I would have done a lot better had I known you. So,
yeah.
it's cool stuff. Now, what'd you do after that? So we're going to talk. I would love for people to know, like, you're not just a little entrepreneur. I mean, you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about the next thing you're going to create.
Right. So, after that, I graduated, moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I joined my wife's dentist, who'd been her dentist since she was 14. And he had a little old house that he had renovated to a dental office. And I bought in as a partner after 6 months of working with him. And he did about 600,000 in revenue the year before I joined him. A true fee for service office, which was totally unique. Nobody in that area was fee for service; they were all insurance based. And we had a great little run. We grew that one office, doing 600,000, to 4 office locations, doing over 6.5 million in about 7 years. Brought on some partners along the way, cashed out some of my equity, sold half of the business for 4 times what I paid for my half within about 3 years, which was kind of cool. And, had a good little run. So multi-practice owner, and sold 2 of those because you know what? I like to torture myself and dig holes for myself. And sold my best offices and took over the 2 worst ones to try to
Wow.
grow them again. Um, those were doing about 1.6 million when I took them over. And 3 years later, they were doing 6 million. So again, a lot of growth, focusing on maximizing the capacity of those practices as a result. And as you said, entrepreneur, out of those struggles, when I was spending, $36,000 a month in marketing to get 60 new patients from my efforts, 30 at one office and 30 at the other. That's when I started Call Tracker ROI. I started my own marketing tracking company so I could get the answers, right? The truth, the whole truth on what I needed to track dental marketing. And then now that's kind of blossomed into Golden Goose scheduling. So we help offices answer and schedule more new patient calls throughout the country. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And we are going to do I'd love to do multiple things, because even the science of answering the phone call and your metrics, it's brilliant. And that's for another show.
yeah,
But you and I were talking before we went live about the COVID mindset gap. Now, I want you to talk about 2 things. Number one, the why. Why is this so more? And then define it from your perspective. What is it that
yeah.
we're going to be talking about?
Definitely. So some backstory. Part of what I've done is I've always had an interest in why people do what they do. From a behavioral science standpoint, I love psychology, but more what their motivation is, really what triggers their action, right? What really sets the stage for them to say yes or no to our request. So I was fortunate that I got to study under the authority in this field of influence and ethical persuasion, Dr. Robert Cialdini. And after a year of training with him, I was certified in his method of influence. And then that's part of the main reason why I was able to grow my practices, especially the second phase, the worst ones like I did, was I was able to really build my strategies around mindsets and what are people using to make their decisions and change my patient's behavior, change my associate doctor's behavior, and change my team's behavior as well, and influence everyone to get more stuff done in a positive way. So with behavioral science stuff, we look at mindsets because whether you realize it or not, when your patient walks through the door of your practice, they're coming in with a mindset already established. Okay. And most of the time, unfortunately, the mindset they're coming in with is competing with what we want to talk about. So potentially, if their mindset competes, the door to yes is already shut in our face, and it's kind of hard to open that thing back up. And so
Right.
COVID especially is it's a unique time that's created a global uncertainty, but a major uncertainty here in the US. And so what I've seen it from a behavioral science standpoint, and there's been some studies that have shown this, is it's really created two main types of mindsets that people have kind of been forced into, one bucket or the other. So understanding that for your practice is what we're going to talk about. What it looked like before COVID, what it looks like now, and what you should be doing to what I call close this gap in patient care, both in the hygiene chair and the doctor side chair, because of these two mindsets that we're running up against and we're battling against right now.
Yeah, I think it's powerful. I'm excited to see what you have to say because I talk to dentists. I'm not kidding. Every single day, at least one person says this to me. I'm done talking about this thing. I'm just done. Like it's every patient, every chair, all day long. Then I leave my practice. And I just heard this morning. Like a patient said to the doctor, like, has your team been vaccinated? Like, first of all, that's a HIPAA violation. So let's go back to like, okay, what it was before,
Mhm.
what happened during, and what you've been learning through.
Yeah. So before COVID happened, my main goal was, from an influence standpoint, was to ask my patients a key question, new, existing, before I got into the conversation of their dental needs or wants or desires. It was a very simple question. I need to get a commitment out of them and tell me what they stood for. What do they value in my practice? So the question was, when it comes to your oral health, do you prefer to be more proactive, meaning you want to do things today so you avoid costing you more time, money, and pain by waiting? Or do you prefer to be reactive, someone who's okay letting the wheels fall off the bus? You're okay that it's going to get worse and cost you more time, money, and pain by waiting, even though it doesn't bother you now. And what I found was, because our dental practices, if you haven't realized that, are built off of proactive mindset people. We need
Right.
those people coming in for the fillings and the crowns to fill up 80% of our chair time, right? So
Right.
unless you're an emergency clinic now, if you're an emergency clinic, well, then those reactive patients are great because they only come in when there's a problem. Okay. So before COVID, 80% of our patients truthfully were more proactive, especially when given a choice in the matter. And the minority were the reactive mindset ones, the ones that would just put it off until it's too late. Well, now COVID has flipped the paradigm. Okay. Because now this new mindset that kind of pairs well with this proactive and reactive is, are they risk tolerant or are they risk averse? And what we're finding is the risk tolerant mindset tends to go along with the reactive mindset people, right?
Right.
The ones that are taking the calculated risk by letting things get worse. Okay. Versus the risk averse folks are the proactive ones. They're the ones digging in their heels like, ooh, I don't know. If I don't feel safe, I'm not moving. I'm risk averse. Right. So now it's kind of interesting, when we closed our doors and we had an unprecedented shutdown throughout the country for most of us 2 months, sometimes 3 months, depending on your state. All of those reactive mindset people, those risk tolerant people, if you will, had always felt like they could get into a dentist anywhere at any time when their issue became apparent, right? That was what their calculated risk was. Yeah, it doesn't bother me today, but when it does tomorrow, I'll find a dentist somewhere. But what did the shutdown show them? When their problem did manifest, could they find us? Could they get in somewhere? And the answer was they could not,
No.
right? So what it did was it created this powerful scarcity effect, right? That's one of Cialdini's principles. We don't want it till we can't have it. And then suddenly we can't have it. Oh, now I want it more, right? So all these people, it created this pent up desire and motivation to get into a dental office somewhere and do as much as possible. So when the doors opened up, I kind of thought it was interesting. We had all our precautions taken. We had like 15 masks on, N95s and N98s, and HIPAA air filters and air purifiers. You name it, man. We had everything locked down and taped up. And if there was a bacteria to be found or virus in our practice, I would have been surprised. But the patients that showed up when we first opened could have cared less. Not one time did these patients ask us what precautions we had taken. In fact, we asked them to text us and not be waiting in the waiting room. And we opened the door and we had a quick team meeting because we thought people would be waiting for us to respond to tell them to come upstairs. And we go to the waiting room and there's 5 people in the waiting room. Nobody's got a mask on. They're all standing around each other. Nobody cares. Okay. And I thought, what is going on? Like, this makes no sense. I thought people would be freaking out. Well,
Right.
not when you're risk tolerant, right? For them, they didn't care, right? It was a calculated risk. They were going to be fine. They knew dental offices we're no stranger to viruses. Okay. Pick your swine flu, your avian flu, your SARS, or H1N1, right? This is not a new rodeo for us necessarily. So they felt like our precautions were going to keep them safe and they came in. So these reactive people were feeding our chairs, which is great. The problem was on the hygiene side, the gap itself, like being shut down for too much, caused that hygiene gap, right? Because we were closed in March and April and whatever, that means we didn't reschedule those people for September, October, and part of November, which means we had a huge hygiene gap we had to get through. Okay. But the doctor chair was full, so maybe we were a little less concerned. Now that we've kind of gotten through that hygiene gap, now we got this issue with the doctor side chair gap. Because while we had the risk tolerant folks were filling our chairs, that's great. But guess who's not coming in right now? And it still really isn't coming in unless they have a big dental issue. That risk averse crowd, the majority of our patients. Okay. So we're having a hard time filling them. And now doctors are finding their doctor side chair time is starting to open up and increase because it's empty, because they've run out of the risk tolerant folks. So that's
Wow.
the gap that I've been talking about, right? The gap between when you run out of the risk tolerant folks who are ready to come in now to the time when the risk averse folks actually feel safe enough to come back in. There's a gap of time there. And it
Yeah.
could be 3 to 6 more months if we're not careful.
Right. Now, this is a big concept. I love what you're talking about right now. How in the world did you get a group of people around you? Because you're going to have to educate your team around this. You just can't do this yourself. How did you go to them? And then how do you use this even on a daily basis, even in your new patient process? Like, take us through the how of
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Well, it started with teaching my team this risk tolerant mindset. And because they're reactive, prior to this, they knew things were going to get worse. They knew there was going to be a big check to write. But now their motivation is getting not only the main issue done, but truthfully, anything else that could be done today, they're going to say yes to the majority of the time. Okay. So I rejiggered our schedule and told our team we need to stop trying to schedule people and treatment plan for too many things, because we can only, and we should narrow our focus to treatment planning them today for what we can get done today, because as much as we can get done today. So if they've got 3 or 4 crowns that need to be done and I feel like I can get them all done today, then I'm going to talk to that patient about the 3 or 4 crowns, the one they came in for, and the 2 or 3 others that are about to blow up on them. Okay. Or could be in the process of it. And what we're finding is whatever we're asking for that we can get done today, that's what we were getting high acceptance. So our production, and when I talk to a lot of dentists that follow my advice on this, has been off the charts. And in fact, many of our practices, and like mine, when we actually produced so much towards the end of the year that we made up for the 2-month gap. It was like we never even shut down. We
Right.
had matched the year before numbers as a result, because we were tapping into that risk tolerant mindset, getting as much done as possible. And they were more than happy to say yes, because they didn't want to be stuck in that same situation again. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was really the key. And so some practices, let's say if you've been in practice for 20 plus years, like I've almost been in practice for 20 years, I'm still going through the risk tolerant folks. Okay. Because you had a ton of them to get through. You built your practice on them. You just hadn't realized they only come in on occasion. But
Right.
for those practices that were like 1 or 2 years out that didn't have a lot of them, they've already felt this gap. They've already seen these people disappear, and they're not seeing the risk averse crowd coming back in yet. So they're feeling it sooner. So my main advice, not only for my team and what we did for our practices and other doctors is, and I still feel like you need to be doing this now, is you got to increase your marketing efforts to find more of those risk tolerant patients. They're still looking to get in somewhere. They're still not sure who's open and who's going to get them in today, right? Because that's what they're looking for, a short period of time. So if you've got the capacity, you need to be marketing that. And you're going to attract more of those people and see more of the risk tolerant folks longer and buy you more time till we get the other side back.
Yeah. Now I have so many questions. So number one, same day dentistry. This is a concept for a lot of dentists that if they don't understand it, it's hard, right? Same day dentistry. And there's a lot of misconceptions. What do you think most dentists get wrong about when they think same day dentistry? What are some of the basic misconceptions?
Probably just not having a realistic idea of what they can get done themselves, what
Right.
their production level is, right? And streamlining it. To me, I've been doing this long enough. Prepping one crown versus four crowns is really no different. But I do understand that if they're four different teeth, like one tooth in four different quadrants, is not the same or the same amount of time as if I have four teeth in the same quadrant,
Right.
right? So understanding my own limitations, and when I see an opportunity, if I can get more done here and or here, so do a quad, do a side, right? And then depending on how much more time I have, maybe I'll look at other things as well, and just budgeting my time accordingly.
Right. And then the schedule's got to be built, because some people are very methodical. Like you can't mess with their schedule. You've got to know how to build a schedule like that allows for the flexibility of same day dentistry, which is a whole nother mindset. That's really important.
And the truth is, these patients, when they're coming in, their focus when they're looking from a marketing standpoint is on getting in somewhere. Okay.
Right.
That's why one of the messages I like to use is call today, get in today. Now, I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to treat them today. Okay. I'm not guaranteeing I'll even start it today, much less finish it. But I know they're focused. That I can pretty much do. I usually can find a chair somewhere if you have capacity to get them in and diagnose them, treatment plan them for, again, as much as I can do in their next same day visit. And
Right.
again, we're still getting a lot of acceptance because of the gift you gave them by getting them in and satisfying their search.
Yeah. Now I want to go a little bit deeper because I know you're a huge data guy. You're not making any of this up. You're a guy that looks at data and then studies what the data means. But can you talk about between stimulus, which is the phone call, and when they see the office, how important is that a dental office understands that time between the phone call and when they're seen, type of a thing,
Oh,
and I'll even feed you like kind of the answer. You already know that if somebody calls your office and it's 6 days from now or 9 days from now before they get in, what are some of the things that you notice on the data side?
yeah. While the chances are, if your team is well trained and educated on how to schedule the appointment, you're probably going to make the appointment, but the no-show rate of those patients will go up dramatically, especially if they've come in from an online marketing source, right? Where they're pseudo interested, maybe impulse shoppers, but I call them interested, but they're not committed to coming in yet. Not really. So I think expect higher no-show rates is really the problem. Because again, they needed an appointment for something. They got
Right.
it. Now they're going to keep searching to see if I can find one sooner somewhere else. And if
Right.
they do, then you're off the table.
Right. Okay. Now let's go back to the mindset. We were talking about the two mindsets. Now, again, I'm going to ask you to step out of your comfort zone because I'm going to ask you to be, hypothetically, what do you think is going to happen? And I'm
Yeah.
going to preface this, on our street right now, there's like 5 or 6 dumpsters. There's no competition for discretionary dollars. People are like still in flux about what the world looks like. People can't go on vacation. So I got a buddy of mine, he's redoing his bathroom. So when it comes to these two mindsets, what are your thoughts in the months that come with that's happening in the world?
Yeah, it's truly the same as it is now. Let's talk about the risk averse people for a second. Okay. Because
Okay.
again, they're there for the most part on the whole are only coming in if a pressing dental need is there. Okay. An emergency. So what I've been trying to teach people on how to counter this mindset is if they don't feel safe, they're not going to move, right? If they feel uncertain or there's questions or doubt about is something going to happen to me, that's why the patient mentioned earlier when they were asking the team, have you been vaccinated? When they ask that question, just realize it for what it is. They're unsure. They don't feel safe anywhere
Right.
when they should, of course, feel safe at our office, right? So part of what I've been teaching people for this longest time is the only way to get these people back sooner is we have to constantly communicate to our existing patients, our risk averse crowd, why they're safe in our office. So, I mean, if you're not emailing them weekly, if you're not sending them newsletters or sending them postcards, because people absorb information in different ways. If you're not sending them text, you're not reaching out and touching them, if you're not putting posts on your social media, you got to let them know all of the things you're doing to keep them safe and why it is not a risk to come to see you.
Right. Okay. Go deeper on that one because this is what I hear about all day. Patients are sitting in your chair and they're like, I've heard that and then the doctor will go, so where'd you hear that? And the patient will go, well, I saw that on Facebook. I'm like, oh, so you're quoting people are getting their news.
Oh, yeah.
And, we won't make this a political statement, but like people are getting news from uncited sources and they're making it their own reality. and how they're behaving in your practice. So you have to proactively, create the truth for them, right?
Yeah. So here's why, right? So nobody's asking, why do we do that? Why do we are on Facebook and why do we care what everybody else is up to and what their opinions are over fact? Well, the truth of the matter is, when we are uncertain, when we are unsure, those are the two principles we lean on the most. We look to social proof. Okay. We look to the evidence of what others are doing. If the crowd's moving one direction, we've learned evolutionarily that there could be a dangerous situation. And if I don't move with them, I might be in trouble. So imagine like fish swimming out in the ocean. They don't swim by themselves typically, they school together. And when the school moves, they move, because if one's left swimming all alone, what tends to happen? We get eaten, right? So bad things tend to occur. So we're hyper alert and aware of what others are up to in an uncertain situation. Okay. Now, the other thing we look to, the other principle, is the authority principle, right? Where this is a time more than any that we really look to credible, trustworthy experts to tell us what we should do. Right. But what problem do we have with our experts? Can they come to an agreement or a consensus on what the right answer is? No. And so when the experts are all over the damn place, guess what happens? The patients have nothing else to look to except their friends and what their community is up to. Right or wrong, that's what we use, right? So when you communicate to your patients and you share studies about how, because there's plenty of studies you can cite on how, not getting your teeth clean can set you up for worse COVID symptoms or, worse medical issues as a result, right? You got to remind them that there is one authority they should be trusting, you. And that only comes with communication, constant communication, and reassuring them on why they're going to be safe come to see you.
Yeah, I love that. And so how do you do it, Chris? You're sending emails, newsletters with things that have been published by the CDC, or so you're bringing them factual information that's been published this week or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I'm doing simple things like reminding them, as I said, that viruses are not new to dentistry. Okay, right. This isn't our first rodeo. It might be the message, the headline I might put up there when it comes to viruses. And I'll list all those viruses that we've had to deal with before. Each time, I don't know if you look back at Google news stories about each of those, the swine flu, the bird flu, SARS, H1N1. I mean, people thought it was the end of the world then too. Okay. And you know what? Not one of those times in any of those viruses was an outbreak ever linked to a dental office. It just wasn't, because our precautions that we were already taking protect us and our patients. Because aerosols, again, are not new to the dental office. We've been dealing with aerosols for a lifetime. Okay. So we got to remind patients that, this isn't our first rodeo. We got to remind them, especially those that are going out, if they're going to the store, if they're getting their hair done, if they're getting their nails done, right? They're already committed to taking a risk to go there, and they're taking no precautions, not like we are. Why wouldn't they come see us too? Because of these precautions that we're taking.
Yeah.
Right? So remind them of the commitments that they're already making. You're already going out and doing these other things. So why wouldn't you feel safe coming here? Because we're much better prepared to take care of you than they are and keep you safe. And again, citing those sources. So there's all kinds of things you can be communicating with them weekly to stay in touch and let them know what you're up to.
Yeah. So go back to this. Okay. So let's say I'm a 32-year-old dentist and I'm watching this. I'm like, Chris, I totally agree. But what am I going to run into when I'm talking to my team of 13 tomorrow about, risk averse, and like, walk me through this. How do we even start this process of, making this a reality in our practice, and what should I be looking for?
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is take a look at who's coming in and why they're coming in, right? Is it a preventative thing that they're coming in for? Or is it a reactive thing, right? Is it, this went too long, now I need a root canal. Now I need an extraction. Now I need an implant. Now I need this. And see in your practice if your statistics are still showing like I'm seeing, right? But the majority are still that reactive who let things get worse, and now it's a bigger case, a bigger issue. If that's the situation, then you know what you need to do. It's time to up your marketing and try to find more people like them, to give your team time to start coming up with messages. Like I'd sit down with them and say, well, how are we keeping patients safe? What are you concerned about going out in public, or if they're concerned, right? So who better to ask if somebody in your own office is concerned or giving you the most resistance, right? Well, let's find out what their barrier is, because more than likely it's probably one of your patients or a lot of your patients' barrier as well. Instead of hiding from it, let's talk about it and figure out a rational way around it, create a system for it as well.
Right. And I know you love systems and you're a fanatic about checklists. Now I even have to ask you, because I'm thinking about the how too much on this. even in your new patient telephone slip forms or intake forms or on the computer, are you categorize them in these two categories, like when you bring a patient in, or is it just something you're looking for in general with patients?
Yeah, we're not categorizing them on the telephone because again, our main goal is if they're calling, they want to get in soon.
Right.
So that's really our main focus. Get them in somewhere, either in the hygiene chair or the doctor's chair, depending on what the need is. It's really more of when I got them in the chair, why are they here?
Right.
If it was something like they're from a hygiene check and now they're doing their preventative crown, okay, that's interesting. That's telling. But if it's like the majority we're seeing that they're here for some specific dental need, some issue, okay. Like one of my risk averse patients, she came in and she had a tooth issue and she was really hesitant. She was concerned because she's got, 90-year-old parents and in laws that live with her still, they take care of. And her husband's not the best medically. And, she was concerned. But the tooth condition forced her to get over her risk averseness, if you will, and come in. And I took care of her issue. It was fairly simple to fix. But, when I told her, hey, by the way, we're getting these new air purifiers that, are medical grade HIPAA filters that are actually can grab the particle size of this virus. We know you're going to have virus free air every 10 minutes. She looked up at me. She goes, "You're really doing that for the whole office?" I said, "Yeah, every room, whatever." She goes, "You know what? When that happens and you get your units, you call me. I'm bringing everybody in for their cleanings."
Wow.
Right? It's kind of like when your market speaks, you need to listen.
Yeah.
So she's telling me right away what her barrier was and how this was a solution to it on how we're keeping her safe. So I know with the team, what other ways are we doing that or that you've heard in your conversations with patients? And, a big push I've been making right now is, you need Google reviews, right? Fresh Google reviews are key for free marketing to find more risk tolerant people. You're going to come up earlier in the searches than anybody else, the more reviews you get. But what I want you to ask your patients who are in right now, who are doing these reviews, is that simple question: why did you feel safe coming in?
Yeah.
Because obviously you did, right? And then I want you to leverage that information because each testimonial or review builds your trustworthiness in other patients' mind. That's your authority. But if you start stacking up 4 or more of those every week, that's part of your messaging. Hey, and here's what happened last week. We had a ton of patients. Had very little appointments available. We're busier than ever. That's why we're reaching out to you. I don't want to schedule you today because we couldn't get you in, but I'd like to schedule you for next month while we still have a spot. So
Right.
show people the social proof that because your patients, if they don't see people come into your office right now, they think it's a ghost town.
Right.
They think people are like them and aren't moving or going anywhere. When you share with them that no, we're busy, that influences them to go, "Well, if all those people are going and they feel safe, maybe I will too." When they
Yeah.
see those reviews, look at all these people that are coming in and why they say they feel safe there. Huh, I'll feel safe going there too. So the more we can internally market these message to that risk averse crowd, right? So we've already extended our risk tolerant folks by finding more of them. Now we get our risk averse crowd to come in sooner than they would have otherwise. That's how
Right.
we close this gap.
Yeah. Now, have you heard this too? What is your research shows? I've heard from a lot of private practitioners that the DSOs in their town haven't been as nimble to come back. It was harder for them to come back. And so every private practitioner is like, no, this is go time because they can't get into the big practice. So, like, if they were on the fence trying to find a practice, they were flooded even with new patients. So, when you say patients are still out there, have you noticed that with the larger practice? This is the opportunity. I think it's go time for a smaller practice who's doing their own thing more than ever. But have you found that to be true also?
It's definitely go time. Okay. Not only remember, 35% of the population has dental insurance, which means 65% don't. The majority of those were not going to the dentist. Surveys were showing that less and less people were going to the dentist every year, right? So automatically, there's this huge pool of opportunity that you're going to be able to tap into. That's our reactive folks, by the way. But now, because the corporate groups can't get people in, there's an opportunity there as well to flood
Right.
them and move them your direction. So our new patient records at my practice has been off the charts since we've been back. Okay, we've said record months pretty much every month, but we're actively putting messages out there to bring them our way, getting
Right.
those Google reviews so we show up before others, right? Doing everything that we can to show people that hey, no, you need to come our way. And because you're right, most practices unfortunately are not built to be adaptable, right? Most of our practices out our fellow colleagues, unfortunately, you're built not to change. You're built to be rigid and fixed and to do it the way you've always been doing it. But
Right.
sometimes like this, when the market changes and the situation changes, those that are adaptable get out ahead of the bunch. Now, the
Yeah.
good news is even a solo practitioner is more adaptable than the big DSOs. I mean, those guys are like the oil tanker out on the ocean, and it takes them 8 miles to turn left. Okay,
Right.
so they're not moving quickly. And those that really didn't have the financial backing are the ones that were struggling the most. So it's kind of the ones in the middle. So the ones that are like 20 practices or 25 practices or less are going to be okay. The ones that are, 200 practices and above have so much private equity money, they're too big to fail. Okay.
Right.
They're just reorganizing, and because it takes longer for the right hand to talk to the left hand, they're going to be back and they're going to be fine. Right.
Yeah.
But the middle ones are the ones that were struggling because they didn't have the financial backing that the others had at their various stages. So the good news for us is that I think the smaller DSOs and the larger DSOs are going to spend their time and focus now eating up the middle ones. So they're going to eat themselves for a while, which gives us a break. Okay, so instead of trying to grow one practice at a time, now they can go buy a struggling one and buy 50 practices at one time
Yeah.
and suddenly
Wow.
increase the market cap suddenly, right?
Yeah.
So, but don't think that they won't be back. it's a
Um,
it's the eye of the storm, right? And so I say, hey, you know what a good time to eat is? When it ain't raining. So
I love that. I want to go back to like one of the things I appreciate about you, many things, is you always remove obstacles. I remember you talking about membership in-house before they were cool.
yeah,
And now everyone's like, oh, it's great. But you were doing that a long time ago, and you are really good about removing obstacles so that people can experience you guys first. And that's what you're talking about, is just like set up the conditions. You're not just beating people over the head with marketing and billboards. You're creating great conditions where people come in, they like what they see, and they stay for a long time.
yeah. Well, I interview our existing patients and I find out, why are you here? And what kind of drove you to us? And as I said, when your market speaks, you need to listen, because their answers give me insights into what they were using to make their decision, what their mindset was,
Right.
which then helps me figure out what marketing messages I need to create to get more like them, get their attention. If I can get their attention in any kind of advertising medium, now I got a shot to bring them in the door to call
Yeah.
me or somebody else.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Like I said, I'm going to have you back on many topics. We're going to talk about the phone. I want to talk more on, golden goose scheduling and all that, but give us some last couple thoughts on this, as we look at being, we're in the month of February right now,
Right.
and this thing still has not gone away. It's getting better, but what last words or perspective could you give us on where we are at today as dentists?
You know, it was a scary time during those 2 months we were down, and nobody, including myself, really knew what to expect. I mean, I saw a couple of different ways it could have gone, and truthfully, I think it all for us, because of that scarcity effect and how busy we all were when we opened back up. That was the best case scenario. Okay, so I think moving forward, we're in a very good situation. Okay, we've got less pressure from the DSOs. We've got tons of new patients looking for dentists somewhere. Okay, if we can get our name out there, get our messaging out there that, hey, look at us, we'll take care of you. Okay, so the seeds for growth are right there in front of you. Okay, better than they've been in a long time. People's mindsets are back on health in general, which always works well for us on top of things. Okay, but again, if we get them over some of those barriers, those resistances on what was keeping them in. So right now, I say the future's bright. Now we still got to do a lot of work. I don't see the risk averse crowd moving anytime soon. Okay, it's getting better, especially depending on the vaccination rates in your state. But the further we see more people being vaccinated, when we start seeing your state's COVID rates going down and the death rates going down, then the public is going to be more comfortable and confident, the risk averse crowd, to come back in. But I still think we got another 3 to 6 months. But that doesn't mean we're going to roll over and die in the meantime, right? There's still
Yeah.
plenty we can be doing to counter that, right? Not only with our own existing patients, by again reminding them we're the authority they can trust to get them in sooner, but also going to find more of those tolerant ones because they're out
Yeah.
there.
That's
And
awesome.
I will say, now more than ever, there's two things you need to be focused on: the phone and people overdue for cleanings. Okay. So that, our service at Golden Goose has been on a record interest right now. We doubled our client base because of COVID, because people were down team members, right? And I've still talked to doctors. They're like, yeah, I can't get so and so to work full time. We're still part time, or I can't get so and so back to help me. So, but now we got people in demand and more treatment plans and more financial arrangements, and there's no time for the phone. It's like the
Yeah.
thing we forget about, right? So it's ringing off the hook. And again, we already had a problem with the telephone before COVID. Now it's even worse. So
Yeah.
again, my advice is, get backup, all right? At least a scheduling service, if not mine, somebody's to if it rings a couple times and your team can't grab it, somebody needs to grab it. Okay.
Right.
And if you schedule it like we do, it only costs you when they schedule, that's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you do that? I mean, it's a new patient, it's worth money. And go and have somebody spend their focus on recall reactivation because again, I feel like now once we satisfy the doctor chair gap, we're gonna if those risk averse people don't come back in, we're gonna have a hygiene chair gap too. And the only way to counter that is find those risk averse people and let's get them back into the hygiene chair. Let's get somebody working recall and trying to reactivate anybody that will come in accordingly. So,
Yeah. That's so true. And we had so many practices as they were coming back up. They're like, it's crazy. But then they were also looking at other metrics like the number of active patients that didn't have an appointment. They're like, oh, that's crazy too. They were like
yeah.
700 or 800 really good patients. And I'm like, okay. And everybody went into it with, okay, let's not try to get all of them today, but if we can get that number from 800 down to 700 to 600 to 500, now the chairs are consistently full. Because it was very easy to get caught up in the of the now. Do you know what I mean? With the production levels being high.
Yeah.
But
And I will say, it's never been a better time to have a membership plan and offer that to your patients than right now.
tell us why.
Okay. For a couple of reasons. Number one is because of all the people without insurance and we know they're looking to get in somewhere. So I've found statistically that people who have a membership plan spend more money than those that don't have a membership plan. They
Right.
spend more money annually, more than insurance-based patients, and even more than cash-paying patients. Okay, and that was before COVID. Now we got people with bigger plans, and if they knew, who doesn't like getting a little something off for doing what they knew they had to do anyway, right? But it's kind of like a gift card, right? People who have a gift card spend more money than people who don't have a gift card.
Right.
When they know they're going to save, you know what? Suddenly, it's not just do that one crown. You know what? Why don't I do all 3 crowns? Because you know what? I'm going to save.
Right.
So bigger cases above the board. And sure, I'll be more than happy to give somebody a small discount. We only do 10% off major things, 15% off minor. So it will definitely help you convert more treatment and bigger treatment plans. But I want you to also be promoting this to your patients with insurance. Okay. I want you to plant a seed because here's why. And here the seed you're going to plant is while you have dental insurance today, because of, what businesses can you think of off the top of your head that went out of business this past year because of COVID, right?
A lot of them still challenged. I mean, there's still a lot of on the cusp.
Yeah, and those are big ones that people know, Pier 1, whatever, but how many of them medium-sized or local businesses have gone under that they've seen in your town? So
Right.
what I want to tell them is that, businesses across the board have struggled because of the COVID and the revenue loss. And you know what? They're in the business to make money, which means they're going to have to find a way to make that revenue back this year.
Yeah.
And the best way to make that back is cut cost. So guess what's the low-hanging fruit that a business can cut out tomorrow that probably nobody will miss or care about and saves them money? Their dental insurance benefit.
Yeah.
So the seed I want to plant is while you have insurance today because of COVID, and your company may not offer you insurance tomorrow.
Right.
So if that day comes, we got your back.
Yep.
Here's our membership plan. Here's what it's going to cover. You can get on it today. We'd love you to, and drop that other plan anyway. Or when it does happen, just know we got you covered. And here's why.
I love that. And I'm a big fan of, it's actually negligent to not do them. If you own a business, you got to, my plumber created a membership program, like $10 a month. You're like, that's a no brainer. Our electrician membership program. Like if you're not creating a membership of some, you're just not looking at the true metrics of all the stuff. Now, one thing I think it's important to know or you can't double dip when you have a patient. You don't want them using the insurance okay. So, and you're an expert on that. But I totally agree. I love the planting of the seed because there will be a day, and let's face it, you're a dentist in a town. Like you want to be thought well of that when the day comes, you're the person they're thinking of, right?
That's it. Yeah. So I want to plant a seed, be top of mind. So when that day comes, they're like, oh man, the company's dropped my insurance. What am I going to do? Oh,
Right.
wait, I remember Dr. Phelps saying they had something for this because they won't remember the details, but they're going to remember he had my back. He's got something for this. Let me call him and find out. I don't have to go without. That's
Yeah.
all I want. Plant the seed.
Buddy, this is so awesome. Now, I want people to, I have no doubt that no matter what the future holds, you're going to have something cool here for us in a couple months again. So I want people to listen to your podcast. I want you to tell us about that. Now, you also do influence training. So this concept we're talking about is influence, type of a thing. And you train dentists how to do this. You also have Golden Goose. So if somebody's listening, and then Brenna just asked, she said, where can I find out more information on membership plans? You actually wrote a book about it. You got to read his, Brenna, I would read his book. I have it. It's fantastic. So can you comment on all those?
Yeah. So the book is Grow Your Dental Membership Plan. It's on Amazon and Audible. So if my voice doesn't annoy you, you can listen to me on the audiobook. Since Patrick Stewart was unavailable, I had to do it myself. But that's a great place to start, right? Because I go into the psychology and the mindset to why membership plans work, and we got some data to show you that. And then it's all about how you can structure your plan and create your own plan. There's different companies out there that can help you structure a plan, like BoomCloud, Dental Membership Direct, or some couple of good companies, and they have trainings and resources you can look at. So I think that would be where I'd start on the membership plan stuff. So,
all right, tell us about your podcast and influence training.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Dental Slang. I'm an influence guy. I love communication and why people not only do what they do, but why do we say what we say? And even the funny little clips and phrases, like my partner used to describe Traxident for taking an impression, and you put the little paste around the tooth, and you put the little cotton hat on top of it, so to speak. And one time he looked at an assistant and goes, "Get me the guacamole and the Mexican hat." And of course the assistant knows what's going on. And but I happen to be walking past there and talking to this patient, and she goes, "Hey doc, let me ask you something. Is he really putting guacamole in my mouth?" But something that means something to us, but it doesn't mean something to somebody else in the room, so to speak. Why do we say what we say? And what are some unique analogies and ways we can describe things? Like, we have a good episode on describing the pain cycle and the death of a tooth when it needs a root canal, right? Going from an irreversible pulpitis to a necrotic tooth, using a hurricane analogy, right? So it's ways to describe the things that we do every day, and hopefully learn to communicate better with our team, with our patients, and with each other. That's what dental slang is all about.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So, and then I'm going to put up your email address if you guys want to reach out to Dr. Phelps. He's awesome. I mean, you've got great tips and insight on so many different things. And I want to have you back and talk more about what you're learning on the phone. Like, the phone is I think it's the single most important tool in any office. And you've got great metrics and understanding on why people do what they do. But buddy, I can't thank you enough. I always learn a ton whenever I'm with you, and you challenge my thinking. And so I really appreciate this. So do me a favor. I appreciate it. Stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed today. And if you did, just do us a favor, hit the share button, share with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for things that you guys want to see from Dr. Phelps. I'll have him back, and we'll ask him some really tough questions. And I have no doubt he'll deliver some great answers. And then until we see you guys next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.